Chapter 1. The deluge begins. The rain fell in relentless sheets, a curtain of water that blurred the English countryside into a watercolor smear of greens and greys. Hercule Poirot, seated in the back of a rattling motor car, adjusted his impeccable mustache with a gloved finger, his eyes fixed on the world beyond the window. The driver, a taciturn man named Jenkins, had muttered something about a storm like the end of days before lapsing into silence, leaving Poirot to his thoughts. The little Belgian detective, known for his fastidious nature and unparalleled little grey cells, was not one to be deterred by mere weather, but even he felt a twinge of unease as the car lurched along the flooded lane toward Blackthorn Manor. The invitation had arrived 3 days prior, penned in the elegant but urgent hand of Lord Reginald Ashford. It spoke of a family matter, a secret too delicate for common correspondence, and requested Poirot's presence at the manor with utmost discretion. Poirot, ever intrigued by the prospect of unraveling human complexities, had accepted without hesitation. Now, as the car skidded to a halt before the manor's wrought-iron gates, he wondered what puzzle awaited him in this isolated corner of England. Blackthorn Manor loomed ahead, its Gothic silhouette softened by the downpour. Ivy clung to its stone facade, glistening wetly, and the tall windows reflected the storm's fury like mirrors of chaos. Jenkins opened the car door, and Poirot stepped out, clutching his umbrella, which proved futile against the wind-driven rain. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, pulling his coat tighter. "This is no weather for civilized men." The butler, a gaunt figure named Mr. Harrow, greeted Poirot at the entrance, his face as unriddable as the rain-slicked stone. "Monsieur Poirot, welcome," he intoned, taking Poirot's sodden coat. "Lord Ashford awaits you in the drawing-room." The hall was grand but sombre, its oak-panelled walls adorned with portraits of stern-faced Ashfords, their eyes seeming to follow Poirot as he passed. A faint scent of damp wood and old books lingered, and the distant rumble of thunder underscored the manor's oppressive quiet. In the drawing-room, a fire crackled, casting flickering shadows over a gathering of guests. Lord Reginald Ashford, a wiry man in his 60s with silver hair and a hawkish nose, rose to greet Poirot. "Monsieur Poirot, you honor us," he said, his voice warm but strained. "This storm has trapped us all, I'm afraid, but your presence is most fortuitous." His eyes darted to the others, betraying a nervousness that piqued Poirot's curiosity. The room held a small but eclectic assembly. Lady Beatrice Ashford, Lord Reginald's wife, sat rigidly by the fire, her angular features accentuated by a high-collared gown. Her gaze was cold, appraising Poirot as if he were an intruder. Beside her, their son Victor, a handsome man in his 30s with restless eyes, lounged with a glass of brandy. His fiancée, Eleanor Vance, a pale young woman with auburn hair, clutched a handkerchief, her fingers trembling slightly. Miss Clara Wren, the governess to Victor's young cousin, sat apart, her plain dress and downcast eyes suggesting timidity, though Poirot noted the sharpness in her glance when she thought herself unobserved. Finally, Dr. Simon Langley, an archaeologist and family friend, stood by a bookcase, his tweed suit damp and his expression distracted, as if lost in some academic reverie. "You must forgive the circumstances," Lord Ashford continued, gesturing to the windows where rain lashed the glass. "This storm has cut us off from the village. The telephone lines are down, and the roads are impassable." He hesitated, then lowered his voice. "It is why your expertise is so vital, Monsieur Poirot. I received a letter, a most disturbing one, hinting at a secret within my family. It spoke of truths written in rain, a phrase I cannot fathom." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A letter, you say? May I see it?" Lord Ashford produced a folded sheet from his pocket, its edges slightly crumpled. The handwriting was erratic, the ink smudged as if touched by wet fingers. "It arrived a week ago unsigned," he said. "I thought it a prank, but then other signs appeared." He glanced at his wife, who stiffened but said nothing. Poirot read the letter silently. His lips pursed. "Beware the secrets written in rain, for they will drown the house of Ashford." The words were melodramatic, yet their ambiguity intrigued him. He folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket, aware of the eyes upon him. "This is most curious," he said. "And these other signs?" Lord Ashford hesitated. "Small things. A book left open to a strange passage. A window unlatched despite the storm. And whispers heard by the staff at night." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "I fear someone in this house knows more than they admit." The room fell silent, save for the rain's ceaseless drumming. Poirot's gaze swept over the guests, noting Victor's tightened grip on his glass, Eleanor's sudden intake of breath, and Miss Wren's subtle shift in posture. Dr. Langley, however, seemed oblivious, muttering about ancient scripts. Lady Beatrice broke the tension. "Reginald, this is nonsense," she snapped. "You're frightening the girl." She nodded toward Eleanor, who blushed but said nothing. "Dinner is served," Mr. Harrow announced from the doorway, his voice cutting through the unease. As the group moved to the dining room, Poirot lingered, his eyes drawn to a portrait above the fireplace. It depicted a young woman, her face strikingly similar to Eleanor's, but her expression was one of sorrow. A brass plaque read Lillian Ashford, 1895. The resemblance was uncanny, and Poirot filed it away in his mental catalogue. At dinner the conversation was stilted, the clink of cutlery loud against the storm's roar. Poirot observed the dynamics, Victor's forced charm, Eleanor's nervous glances, and Lady Beatrice's icy control. Miss Wren spoke little, but her eyes darted to Lord Ashford whenever the letter was mentioned. Dr. Langley rambled about a Mesopotamian tablet he'd studied, its symbols supposedly tied to rain rituals, a detail Poirot noted with interest. As the meal ended, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, and Poirot's sharp eyes caught a fleeting detail, a smudge on the windowpane, not rain but a deliberate mark, shaped like a crescent. It vanished as the rain washed it away, but not before Poirot committed it to memory. "The rain," he murmured to himself. "It speaks, does it not?" The evening drew to a close, and Poirot retired to his room, his mind alight with questions. The letter, the mark, the portrait, each was a thread in a tapestry yet to be woven. As he lay in the darkness, the rain's rhythm seemed to whisper secrets, and Hercule Poirot knew that Blackthorn Manor held a mystery as deep and unfathomable as the storm itself. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Downpour. The rain battered Blackthorn Manor with unrelenting fury, each gust of wind rattling the windows as if the storm itself sought entry. Hercule Poirot, seated in a high-backed chair in the library, sipped a cup of tea, prepared to his exacting standards by the butler, Harrow, and observed the room with the precision of a watchmaker. The library was a cavern of shadows, its shelves heavy with leather-bound tomes, and the air thick with the scent of damp paper. The fire in the hearth flickered, casting fleeting light on the faces of the manor's inhabitants, who had gathered after dinner under the pretense of conversation, but now sat in uneasy silence. Poirot's mind returned to the cryptic letter. Lord Ashford had shown him, "Beware the secrets written in rain, for they will drown the house of Ashford." The words, melodramatic yet haunting, suggested a mind both theatrical and deliberate. His gaze drifted to the window, where rivulets of water traced erratic paths down the glass. There, in the condensation, he noticed a faint smudge, not unlike the crescent mark he had seen the previous evening, though this one was less distinct, as if hastily wiped away. "Q.U.," he murmured, filing the observation away. Lord Ashford stood by the fire, his fingers tapping nervously against his watch chain. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, breaking the silence, "I trust you've had time to consider the letter. Do you believe it to be a genuine threat?" His voice carried a tremor, betraying the weight of his unease. Poirot tilted his head, his eyes gleaming with quiet intensity. "A threat, oui. But of what nature? That is the question. It is not enough to fear Lord Ashford. One must understand." He paused, allowing the words to settle. "Perhaps you might share more about these other signs you mentioned. The unlatched window, the whispers, details. S'il vous plaît." The room stirred. Lady Beatrice, seated on a velvet settee, stiffened, her lips pursing as if to silence her husband. Victor Ashford, sprawled in an armchair with a glass of port, snorted softly. "Father, you're making a mountain out of a molehill. A prankster, nothing more. His tone was dismissive, but Poirot noted the way his fingers tightened around the glass, betraying tension. Eleanor Vance, Victor's fiancée, sat beside him, her auburn hair catching the firelight. She twisted her handkerchief, her eyes darting to the window as thunder rumbled. "It's the storm," she said softly. "It makes everything seem sinister." Her voice wavered, and Poirot's sharp gaze lingered on her. Fear, yes, but was it of the storm, or something else? Miss Clara Wren, the governess, occupied a corner chair, her hands folded primly in her lap. She had said little since dinner, but Poirot had observed her earlier, noting how her eyes followed Lord Ashford's every move. Now she spoke, her voice low but clear. "The staff have heard things, Monsieur Poirot. Footsteps in the corridors at night. Words, half caught, like whispers in the rain." Her words were measured, but her gaze flicked to Lady Beatrice, who met it with a glare. Dr. Simon Langley, the archaeologist, paced near the bookcase, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "Fascinating, isn't it?" he mused, running a finger along a dusty spine. "Rain has always carried meaning in ancient cultures. Cleansing, rebirth, or judgment. Perhaps our letter-writer fancies themselves a poet." His tone was academic, detached, but Poirot noted the way his hand lingered on a book titled Rituals of the Deluge. "Poetry or not," Poirot said, rising with deliberate grace, "a secret is a secret, and it begs to be uncovered. May I ask, Lord Ashford, who has access to this library? The letter spoke of books, did it not?" He gestured to the shelves, his eyes scanning for anything amiss. Lord Ashford hesitated. "The family, the staff, our guests. It's not locked, though I suppose it should be." He glanced at his wife, who rose abruptly. "This is absurd," Lady Beatrice snapped. "Reginald, you're indulging this nonsense. Monsieur Poirot, surely you don't believe a ghost is scribbling threats?" Her voice was sharp, but Poirot detected a flicker of unease in her eyes. "Not a ghost, madame," Poirot replied smoothly, "but a person with motive and method. That is what interests Hercule Poirot." He moved to the window, examining the smudge more closely. It was faint, but the shape suggested a deliberate mark, a symbol perhaps, though the rain had blurred its edges. He turned to the group. "Has anyone noticed such marks before? On windows, perhaps, or elsewhere?" Silence greeted him, though Eleanor Sep's hands stilled, and Victor Sep's jaw tightened. Miss Wren Sep's eyes dropped to her lap, and Dr. Langley muttered something about cuneiform. Poirot smiled faintly. "No matter. The truth, it reveals itself in time." To ease the tension, Poirot began a series of informal inquiries, cloaked as polite conversation. He spoke first with Eleanor, complimenting her delicate bracelet, a silver chain with a crescent pendant, oddly reminiscent of the window mark. "A family heirloom?" he asked. She flushed. "No, a gift from Victor. He said, it suited me." Her voice faltered, and Poirot noted Victor's quick glance at her, a mix of affection and warning. With Victor, Poirot discussed the manor's history, learning of a great-uncle who had vanished decades ago, leaving rumors of a hidden fortune. Victor laughed it off, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of greed. Lady Beatrice, when pressed about the staff, was curt, insisting they were loyal but refusing to elaborate on past dismissals. Miss Wren spoke of her duties with the young cousin Emily, but her answers were vague, her gaze evasive. Langley, predictably, rambled about ancient scripts, though Poirot noted his familiarity with the library's rarest volumes. As the evening wore on, the storm's ferocity grew, the wind howling like a chorus of restless spirits. Poirot excused himself to examine the library more closely, his fingers tracing the spines of books near where Dr. Langley had lingered. One volume, A History of the Ashford Family, was slightly askew, its pages damp as if recently handled. Opening it, Poirot found a passage underlined in faint pencil. "The rain hides what the heart conceals." The words echoed the letter's tone, and Poirot's pulse quickened. Returning to the group, he noticed Eleanor staring at the window, her face pale. Following her gaze, he saw nothing but rain, yet her fear was palpable. "Mademoiselle," he said gently, Is there something you wish to share with Poirot? She shook her head, her voice barely a whisper. It's nothing, just the storm. But her eyes told a different story, and Poirot resolved to watch her closely. As the guests dispersed to their rooms, Poirot lingered, his mind a whirl of observations. The crescent mark, the damp book, Eleanor's fear, Victor's tension, Miss Wren's evasiveness. The rain, he thought, was more than a backdrop. It was a player in this drama, washing away clues but revealing others. The secret written in rain, he murmured. It speaks, but only to those who listen. He retired to his room, the storm's rhythm a constant companion. As he closed his eyes, he pictured the manor's inhabitants, each a piece in a puzzle yet to be solved. The whispers in the downpour had only begun, and Hercule Poirot was determined to hear their truth. Chapter 3. The Body in the Courtyard. The storm raged on, its fury unabated, as if the heavens themselves conspired to shroud Blackthorn Manor in chaos. Hercule Poirot, roused from a light sleep by a piercing scream, sat upright in his guest room, his senses instantly alert. The clock on the mantel read 2:30 in the morning, and the rain's relentless drumming filled the silence between thunderclaps. The scream, unmistakably female, had come from the direction of the courtyard. Poirot donned his dressing gown, adjusted his moustache with habitual precision, and seized his umbrella, though he suspected it would be of little use. He stepped into the corridor, where flickering gas lamps cast eerie shadows on the oak-paneled walls. Footsteps echoed as other guests emerged, their faces pale with alarm. Victor Ashford, his shirt untucked, was already halfway down the stairs, followed by Eleanor Vance, her nightgown clutched tightly around her. Lady Beatrice appeared at the landing, her expression a mix of indignation and fear, while Miss Clara Wren lingered behind, her eyes wide but curiously composed. Dr. Simon Langley, dishevelled and clutching a candle, muttered about ill omens. Mr. Harrow, the butler, materialized with a lantern, his gaunt face grim. "It came from the courtyard," Victor said, his voice hoarse. "Hurry!" Without waiting, he led the way to the manor's rear entrance, where the heavy oak door rattled under the storm's assault. Poirot followed, his mind racing. The scream suggested calamity, and his thoughts returned to the cryptic letter, "Beware the secrets written in rain." As they reached the door, Mr. Harrow unbolted it, and a gust of wind flung it open, spraying rain across the flagstones. The group spilled into the courtyard, a cobbled expanse flanked by ivy-covered walls and a stone fountain, now overflowing with rainwater. There, sprawled face down in the mud, lay Lord Reginald Ashford. His nightshirt was sodden, clinging to his thin frame, and a dark stain spread from a wound in his back. Eleanor gasped, clutching Victor's arm, while Lady Beatrice let out a strangled cry. "Reginald!" she exclaimed, starting forward, but Poirot raised a hand. "Non, madame," he said firmly. "We must not disturb the scene. Monsieur Harrow, fetch a blanket to cover the body, but touch nothing else." The butler nodded and hurried inside, while Poirot knelt beside the body, heedless of the mud staining his trousers. The rain washed away blood, but the wound, a single precise stab to the heart, was unmistakable. A knife, its blade gleaming faintly, lay a few feet away, half buried in the mud. Poirot's eyes scanned the courtyard, noting its peculiarities. The cobblestones were slick, the mud churned by the storm, yet there were no footprints leading to or from the body. The fountain's overflow had created a shallow pool, but it too showed no disturbances. "Most curious," he murmured. "An impossible crime, perhaps." He rose, his gaze sweeping the group, who stood huddled under the eaves, their faces a tableau of shock and suspicion. "Who found him?" Poirot asked, his voice cutting through the rain's roar. "I did," Miss Wren said, stepping forward. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled slightly. "I couldn't sleep, so I came downstairs for a glass of water. I saw the door ajar and found him." Her eyes met Poirot's briefly before dropping to the ground. "You saw no one else?" Poirot pressed. She shook her head. "No one. Just Tim." Victor swore under his breath. "This is madness. Who would do this?" His eyes darted to Eleanor, who was shivering violently, her face ashen. Lady Beatrice, her composure fraying, snapped. "This is your fault, Victor. Always stirring trouble." Her accusation hung in the air, and Poirot noted the flicker of guilt in Victor's expression. "Enough," Poirot said, his tone calm but commanding. "We return inside. The rain, it destroys evidence, but Hercule Poirot will not be so easily thwarted." Harrow, who had returned with a blanket to cover the body, then led the group back to the drawing-room, where the fire had dwindled to embers. Once inside, Poirot began his inquiries, his manner precise yet disarming. "We must establish where each of you was at the time of the scream." "Monsieur Victor." Victor ran a hand through his hair. "In my room, asleep. Eleanor woke me when she heard it." Eleanor nodded, her voice barely audible as she confirmed his account. Lady Beatrice claimed to have been in her bedroom reading, though Poirot noted the absence of a book when she appeared in the corridor. Dr. Langley said he was in the library studying a manuscript and produced a smudged page of notes as proof. Miss Wren repeated her story of fetching water, and Mr. Harrow claimed to have been in the servants' quarters, roused by the noise. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the door to the courtyard, it was ajar, you say, Mademoiselle Wren? Yet it was bolted when we retired. Who unbolted it?" A heavy silence followed. Miss Wren's lips parted, but no words came. Lady Beatrice's face tightened, and Victor's gaze flicked to the floor. Poirot made a mental note. Someone was lying, or someone had moved unseen. He turned his attention to the knife, now retrieved by Mr. Harrow and placed on a cloth. It was a kitchen knife, its handle worn but clean of fingerprints, likely washed by the rain. "This blade," Poirot said, "it is familiar to the household." "Oui, Monsieur Harrow. Is it from the Manor's kitchen?" The butler nodded. "Yes, sir. One of our carving knives." "Accessible to all," Poirot mused. "Yet placed so carelessly. The killer, they are bold. Or panicked." He paced, his mind cataloguing details. The absence of footprints, the open door, the precise wound. The rain, he realized, was both ally and enemy, concealing the killer's tracks but preserving other clues. As the guests murmured among themselves, Poirot's gaze fell on Eleanor, who stood by the window staring into the storm. Her hands clutched her crescent pendant, and for a moment her reflection in the glass seemed to merge with the rain. "Mademoiselle," he said softly, approaching her, "you are troubled. Is there something you wish to tell Poirot?" Her eyes widened, and she shook her head. "No, it's just horrible." But her voice trembled, and Poirot sensed a deeper fear. The group dispersed to their rooms, under Poirot's instruction to remain until morning. Alone in the drawing-room, he examined the window where he had seen the smudge the previous night. It was clean now, but a faint residue remained, suggesting a pattern. He traced it with a finger. Another crescent, like Eleanor's pendant, like the mark in the courtyard. "The rain," he whispered. "It writes, and Hercule Poirot reads." As dawn approached, the storm showed no sign of abating. Poirot returned to his room, his mind a whirl of questions. The body in the courtyard was no accident, but a deliberate act tied to the secrets hinted at in the letter. The absence of footprints suggested cunning, and the knife's placement hinted at haste. Someone in Blackthorn Manor had woven a deadly web, and Poirot was determined to unravel it, thread by rain-soaked thread. Chapter 4. Shadows of Motive. The rain continued its assault on Blackthorn Manor, a ceaseless torrent that seemed to seep into the very walls, amplifying the chill of suspicion that now gripped its inhabitants. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room, his small, precise figure a beacon of calm amidst the storm of emotions swirling around him. The murder of Lord Reginald Ashford had shattered the fragile civility of the household, and the guests gathered for a late breakfast wore their unease like ill-fitting garments. Poirot, his moustache impeccably groomed, despite the hour, sipped his coffee, black, no sugar, and observed the faces before him, each a potential mask concealing guilt. Lady Beatrice sat at the head of the table, her posture rigid, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. She spoke little, her silence a fortress, though Poirot noted the way her fingers clutched her teacup, betraying her strain. Victor Ashford, his face haggard from a sleepless night, pushed his food around his plate, his gaze flickering between his mother and his fiancée, Eleanor Vance. Eleanor, pale and withdrawn, avoided eye contact, her hands folded tightly in her lap, the crescent pendant at her throat catching the dim light. Miss Clara Wren, the governess, maintained her quiet composure, though her eyes darted to the windows, as if expecting the storm to reveal more than rain. Dr. Simon Langley, the archaeologist, seemed oddly detached, scribbling notes on a napkin, muttering about ancient flood myths. Mr. Harrow, the butler, moved silently, serving with mechanical precision, his gaunt face unreadable. Poirot set down his cup, his voice cutting through the clink of cutlery. "Mes amis," he began, his tone measured. "The tragedy of Lord Ashford's death demands clarity. To find the truth, we must explore the why, the motive. Who among you can shed light on why someone wished him harm?" His eyes swept the table, noting each reaction. Lady Beatrice's sharp intake of breath, Victor's clenched jaw, Eleanor's sudden stillness. Victor broke the silence, his voice sharp. "This is ridiculous, Poirot. My father was a good man who'd want to kill him. Some vagrant, probably, caught in the storm." His words lacked conviction, and Poirot's gaze lingered on him. "A vagrant, monsieur. Yet the courtyard showed no footprints, and the gates are locked." "None. The answer lies within these walls." Poirot's tone was gentle but firm, and Victor flushed, looking away. Lady Beatrice spoke, her voice icy. "If you must pry, Monsieur Poirot, consider the will. Reginald was revising it, you know. Some might have resented that." Her eyes flicked to Victor, then Eleanor, a silent accusation hanging in the air. Eleanor's head snapped up. "What are you implying, Lady Beatrice? I loved Reginald like a father." Her voice trembled, and Poirot noted the desperation in her tone, as if she feared being misunderstood. "Enough," Poirot said, raising a hand. "The will, it is a starting point. Lord Ashford, he spoke of a family secret. Perhaps this secret, it is tied to his fortune or to something more personal." He turned to Mr. Harrow. "Monsieur, you have served the Ashfords for many years. What can you tell Poirot of this will, or of any tensions in the household?" The butler hesitated, his eyes flickering to Lady Beatrice. "I'm not privy to the details of the will, sir," he said carefully. "But Lord Ashford was concerned about certain family matters. He mentioned a legacy, something to be protected." His voice was neutral, but Poirot sensed a guarded truth. Sensing the need to shift his approach, Poirot excused himself to the library, where the damp book and underlined passage from the previous night still lingered in his mind. The room was dim, the storm's grey light filtering through the windows, and the air carried a musty scent of wet leather. He moved to the shelf where he had found the history of the Ashford family, its pages marked with the cryptic note, "The rain hides what the heart conceals." As he reached for it, his fingers brushed a loose paper tucked behind the book, a torn fragment, its edges damp and ink-smudged. Poirot held it to the light, his pulse quickening. The fragment bore a few scrawled words. "Beneath the deluge, the truth lies." The handwriting matched the cryptic letter shown to him by Lord Ashford, though the paper was newer, as if torn from a larger missive. "A clue or a taunt," he murmured, slipping the fragment into his pocket. The reference to deluge echoed the storm, and Poirot wondered if the killer was weaving a deliberate narrative. Returning to the drawing-room, he decided to probe Dr. Langley, whose obsession with ancient scripts intrigued him. "Monsieur Langley," Poirot said, approaching the archaeologist, who was now sketching symbols on his napkin. "You spoke of rain in ancient cultures. Is there a symbol, perhaps, associated with secrets or judgment?" Langley blinked, as if startled from a trance. "Oh, indeed. In Mesopotamian texts, the crescent moon often symbolized hidden knowledge veiled by the god's tears. Rain, you see." He gestured to his sketch, a crude crescent not unlike the marks Poirot had seen. "Fascinating, isn't it? The Ashford Library has a tablet replica with such symbols." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And this tablet, it is here." "In the study," Langley replied, oblivious to the weight of his words. Lord Ashford was quite proud of it. Poirot made a mental note to examine the study later, but his attention shifted to Miss Wren, who had slipped into the room, her movements quiet but purposeful. "Mademoiselle," he said, "you mentioned whispers in the night. Have you heard anything more since the tragedy?" Her eyes met his, steady but guarded. "Nothing clear, Monsieur Poirot. Just unease. The staff are frightened. They say the manor is cursed." Her voice was soft, but Poirot detected a hint of calculation, as if she were testing him. "Cursed?" Poirot smiled faintly. "None, mademoiselle. The only curse is that of human greed or fear. But tell me, have you seen any marks, crescents perhaps, on windows or elsewhere?" Miss Wren's hands stilled, and for a moment her composure faltered. "No," she said quickly. "Nothing like that." But her hesitation was enough to pique Poirot's interest. As the day wore on, the storm showed no sign of relenting, its roar a constant reminder of the manor's isolation. Poirot spoke briefly with each guest, piecing together motives, Victor's potential inheritance, strained by his father's revisions to the will, Eleanor's fear, possibly hiding a secret of her own, Lady Beatrice's cold control, masking grief or guilt, Langley's detachment, perhaps a cover for deeper knowledge, and Miss Wren's quiet observance, suggesting more than she revealed. Harrow, too, remained an enigma, his loyalty to the Ashfords unquestioned, but his reticence suspicious. By evening, Poirot stood alone by the library window, watching the rain carve paths in the glass. The torn letter fragment, the crescent marks, the talk of a legacy, all pointed to a secret rooted in the Ashford family's past. "The shadows of motive," he murmured. "They dance in the rain, but Hercule Poirot will bring them to light." Chapter 5. The Cipher in the Mist. The rain at Blackthorn Manor had settled into a steady, mournful rhythm, cloaking the estate in a mist that blurred the line between earth and sky. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, his small, meticulous figure illuminated by a single lamp as he examined the torn letter fragment found the previous day. The words "beneath the deluge, the truth lies" echoed the cryptic warning Lord Ashford had received, and Poirot's little grey cells hummed with purpose. The storm, he mused, was not merely a backdrop, but a conspirator, hiding traces yet revealing secrets to those who knew where to look. The library was silent, save for the patter of rain against the windows, its shelves looming like sentinels of forgotten knowledge. Poirot had dismissed the guests after breakfast, preferring solitude to unravel the fragment's meaning. He spread the paper on a table, noting its damp edges and smudged ink, signs it had been handled recently, perhaps in haste. The handwriting, erratic yet deliberate, suggested a mind both cunning and agitated. "A cipher, perhaps," he murmured, his fingers tracing the words. "Or a riddle meant to taunt." He recalled a case from years past in Brussels where a coded message had concealed a murderer's identity within seemingly innocuous prose. The memory sharpened his focus. He examined the fragment's tiers, noting their uneven edges, as if ripped in a struggle. The phrase "beneath the deluge" intrigued him. Did it refer to the storm, or something deeper, perhaps hidden within the manor itself? He resolved to test the clue's implications, but first he needed more context. Poirot ventured into the storm-soaked grounds, his umbrella a frail shield against the rain. The courtyard, where Lord Ashford's body had been found, was a quagmire of mud and standing water. He knelt near the fountain, its overflow now a steady stream, and examined the ground. The absence of footprints had puzzled him, suggesting the killer had either avoided the mud or used the rain to erase their tracks. But as he scanned the edge of the cobblestones, his eyes caught a faint anomaly, a single muddy footprint, half hidden beneath an overhanging shrub. It was small, narrow, and unlike any shoe he had observed among the guests or staff. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered, his pulse quickening. The footprint, preserved by the shrub's shelter, was fresh, its edges sharp despite the rain. He measured it with his handkerchief, noting its size and shape. A woman's shoe, perhaps, or a small man's. It did not match Eleanor's delicate slippers, Victor's sturdy boots, or Miss Wren's practical shoes. An outsider, he mused, though the locked gates and flooded roads made that unlikely, or someone who moves with great care. Returning to the manor, Poirot sought out Mr. Harrow, the butler, in the servants' quarters. The gaunt man was polishing silver, his movements precise but weary. "Monsieur Harrow," Poirot began, his tone disarming, "you have seen the comings and goings of this house. Have any strangers been about, perhaps before the storm?" Harrow's hands stilled. "No, sir. The manor's been quiet, save for the guests. The roads were already flooding when you arrived." His voice was steady, but Poirot noted a slight tightening of his jaw. "And the staff? All accounted for?" "Yes, sir. Just myself, the cook, and 2 maids, all loyal to the Ashfors." Harrow's eyes met Poirot's briefly, then dropped. Poirot made a mental note. Loyalty could mask secrets as easily as it served. Next, Poirot visited the study, where Dr. Langley had mentioned a tablet replica with crescent symbols. The room was cluttered with artifacts, vases, statuettes, and a locked cabinet that piqued his interest. The tablet, a clay-colored replica etched with cuneiform and a prominent crescent, sat on a desk. Poirot examined it, noting its weight and texture. "A replica yet cherished," he murmured. He recalled Langley's ramblings about rain and hidden knowledge, wondering if the tablet held a clue to the cipher. Back in the library, Poirot gathered the guests, ostensibly to discuss the investigation's progress, but with a subtler purpose, to set a trap. He held up the letter fragment, watching their reactions. "This paper," he said. "It is part of a larger message. I believe it points to something hidden, perhaps in this very room." His eyes flicked to each face. Lady Beatrice's icy stare, Victor's scowl, Eleanor's nervous fidgeting, Miss Wren's sudden stillness, and Langley's distracted nod. "Hidden," Victor snapped. "You, sir, chasing shadows, Poirot. My father sits dead and you, sir, playing word games." Poirot smiled faintly. "Shadows, monsieur, often reveal the truth when light is applied. Tell me, have any of you seen a document, perhaps torn, in this library?" Eleanor Thet's hands clutched her pendant, and Poirot noted the crescent shape again, its similarity to the tablet symbol unmistakable. Miss Wren Sim's eyes darted to a bookshelf, a fleeting glance that Poirot caught. "None?" he pressed, his voice gentle. "Then perhaps we search together." He moved to the shelf Miss Wren had glanced at, pulling books at random. A slim volume on local folklore slipped to the floor, revealing a second fragment tucked inside. The paper matched the first, its words continuing the riddle, "Seek the heart of the storm." Poirot held it up, his gaze sweeping the room. Miss Wren's face paled, and Victor's jaw tightened, but no one spoke. "This is most interesting," Poirot said, pocketing the fragment. "The killer. They play a game, leaving clues in plain sight. But Hercule Poirot, he is no stranger to such games." He paused, addressing Miss Wren directly. "Mademoiselle, you are fond of this library, oui? Have you seen such papers before?" Her voice was steady but strained. "No, Monsieur Poirot. I read here often, but I've seen nothing like that." Her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear, and Poirot resolved to watch her closely. As the guests dispersed, Poirot lingered, piecing together the clues, the footprint, the crescent symbols, the fragmented riddle. The phrase, "heart of the storm," suggested a central point, perhaps the manor's core, or a metaphorical heart tied to the Ashford family. He recalled the portrait of Lillian Ashford, her resemblance to Eleanor uncanny. Was the secret personal, tied to lineage, or material, linked to the rumored fortune? Outside, the mist thickened, shrouding the manor in an ethereal veil. Poirot stood by the window, the rain's rhythm a counterpoint to his thoughts. The footprint suggested a hidden actor, but the locked gates pointed to someone within. The cipher, with its talk of deluge and storm, hinted at a truth buried in the manor's past. "The mist," he murmured. "It conceals, but it also reveals. And Hercule Poirot, he sees through it." He set a mental trap. Tomorrow, he would suggest a search of the manor's grounds, watching for reactions. The killer, he suspected, was growing restless, and a restless mind made mistakes. With the cipher in hand and the footprint in mind, Poirot felt the puzzle taking shape, its pieces scattered but within reach. Chapter 6. Echoes of Betrayal. The rain at Blackthorn Manor fell with a mournful cadence, as if weeping for the secrets buried within its walls. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room, his sharp eyes scanning the gathered guests, their faces etched with fatigue and fear. The murder of Lord Reginald Ashford had cast a pall over the household, and the discovery of the cipher fragments beneath the deluge. The truth lies, seek the heart of the storm, had only deepened the mystery. Poirot's little grey cells buzzed with possibilities, the muddy footprint and crescent symbols lingering in his mind like pieces of an unfinished mosaic. The morning had dawned grey and sodden, the storm showing no sign of relenting. Poirot had announced his intention to search the manor's grounds, a calculated move to unsettle the killer. But first, he turned his attention to Miss Clara Wren, the governess, whose fleeting glances and hesitant answers had piqued his suspicion. Her claim of hearing whispers and her reaction to the second cipher fragment suggested she knew more than she admitted. Poirot resolved to confront her, but with the finesse that only he could muster. He found her in the nursery, tending to young Emily Ashford, Victor's cousin. The room was bright but chilly, its windows rattling under the storm's assault. Emily, a solemn child of 8, was drawing a picture of a crescent moon, an image that made Poirot pause. "Mademoiselle Wren," he said, his voice gentle but probing, "you have been most helpful, yet I sense you carry a burden. The truth, it is heavy. Non. Perhaps you will share it with Hercule Poirot." Miss Renset's hands froze over Emily Setzer's drawing, her face paling. "I don't know what you mean, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice tight. "I told you all I know." Poirot smiled, his eyes never leaving hers. "And yet, mademoiselle, your eyes, they betray you. The library, the whispers, the fragment. There is a connection, oui, and perhaps a name from the past, one tied to the Ashworths." He leaned closer, his tone soft but relentless. "Shall I guess? Clara Wren, or perhaps Clara Ward." Her gasp was barely audible, but it was enough. Poirot's trap had sprung. He had recalled a whispered rumor from Mr. Harrow about a governess dismissed years ago, a woman named Ward, entangled in a scandal involving Lord Ashford's brother. The resemblance in Miss Wren's demeanor, her guardedness, her familiarity with the manor, had led Poirot to suspect she was more than she seemed. How did you know?" Miss Wren whispered, her hands trembling. Emily looked up, curious, but Poirot gestured for her to continue drawing. "It is the method of Poirot," he said. "The little details, the way you watch Lady Beatrice, the way you know the manor sep's routines. You are Clara Ward, dismissed 20 years ago, after an indiscretion with Edward Ashford. Non. You returned under a new name. But why?" Miss Wren's composure crumbled. "I meant no harm," she said, her voice breaking. "Edward and we were in love, but Lady Beatrice called it a scandal. She sent me away, and Edward vanished soon after. I came back to care for Emily, to be near the family I once served. But I swear I didn't kill Lord Ashford." Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind remained sharp, and the whispers. "The fragments. You know more, mademoiselle." She hesitated, then spoke in a rush. "I found the first fragment in the nursery, tucked in Emily Sepper's book. I didn't separate it, but I recognized the handwriting. It sups like Edward Sepper's. I thought he might still be alive, hiding somewhere." Poirot's pulse quickened. Edward Ashford, the missing brother, rumored to have fled with a fortune. Could he be the killer, or was someone using his memory to torment the family? "Merci, mademoiselle," he said. "You have been most illuminating, but you must speak no more of this. Not yet." Leaving the nursery, Poirot's thoughts turned to the manor's layout. The absence of footprints in the courtyard suggested a hidden route, and Miss Wren's revelation about Edward hinted at secrets within the walls. He recalled the damp book in the library, its pages swollen as if exposed to water not from the storm but from below. A hidden passage, perhaps. He enlisted Mr. Harrow to guide him to the manor's cellar, a damp, cavernous space lit by flickering lanterns. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and mildew, and water seeped through cracks in the stone. Poirot examined the walls, his fingers tracing the mortar until he found a loose panel behind a stack of crates. With Harrow's help, he pushed it aside, revealing a narrow tunnel, its floor slick with rainwater. "Mon Dieu!" Poirot murmured, stepping inside. The passage was cramped, its walls rough-hewn, and a faint draught suggested it led to the courtyard. Droplets of water glistened on the floor, fresh and undisturbed, indicating recent use. "This is how the killer moved unseen," he said, his voice echoing. "The rain, it hides their tracks, but not from Poirot." Harrow's face was grim. "This passage hasn't been used in years, sir. It was sealed after Mr. Edward left." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And yet it is open now. Someone knew its secret." He followed the tunnel, emerging in a small alcove near the courtyard fountain, hidden by ivy. The rain had washed away any footprints, but a scrap of fabric, grey like Miss Wren's dress, caught on a jagged stone confirmed recent passage. Returning to the drawing-room, Poirot gathered the guests, his demeanor calm but authoritative. "Mes amis," he said, "the manor holds secrets, as does the heart. A passage has been found, one that explains the impossible crime. But it raises a question: who among you knew of it?" His gaze lingered on Miss Wren, who looked away, and Victor, whose hands clenched. Lady Beatrice scoffed. "This is nonsense. That passage was forgotten years ago." "Forgotten, madame," Poirot countered, "or hidden like so much else in this house." He produced the fabric scrap, watching Eleanor Sepsa's eyes widen and Dr. Langley Sepp's pencil pause. "The truth, it begins to emerge, like a shadow in the rain." As the guests dispersed, Poirot reflected on Miss Wren's revelation. Her connection to Edward Ashford suggested a personal motive, but her fear seemed genuine. The passage pointed to a killer with intimate knowledge of the manor, yet the footprint, small, unfamiliar, suggested another player. The cipher, the crescent marks, the scandal, all were threads in a tapestry of betrayal woven through the Ashford legacy. Outside, the rain fell in heavy sheets, its rhythm a reminder of the secrets yet to be uncovered. Poirot stood by the window, his mind racing. "The echoes of betrayal," he murmured. "They whisper in the storm, but Hercule Poirot, he listens." He resolved to press Miss Wren further and to investigate Edward Ashford's disappearance, certain that the past held the key to the present. Chapter 7. The clock strikes midnight. The storm over Blackthorn Manor raged with undiminished fury, its winds howling like restless spirits seeking vengeance. Hercule Poirot stood in the study, his sharp eyes fixed on the replica tablet Dr. Langley had described, its crescent symbol glinting faintly under the lamplight. The discovery of the hidden passage and Miss Clara Wren's connection to a past scandal had sharpened Poirot's focus, but the cipher fragments, beneath the deluge, the truth lies seek the heart of the storm, still eluded full comprehension. The rain, he thought, was both a veil and a mirror, concealing the killer's movements yet reflecting their intent. As midnight approached, the manor's inhabitants gathered in the drawing-room, their nerves frayed by the murder of Lord Reginald Ashford and the oppressive isolation of the storm. Lady Beatrice sat rigidly, her eyes darting to the windows as if expecting an intruder. Victor Ashford paced, his agitation palpable, while Eleanor Vance clutched her crescent pendant, her face pale and drawn. Miss Wren, now exposed as Clara Ward, maintained a quiet reserve, though her hands trembled slightly. Simon Langley scribbled in a notebook, muttering about ancient rituals, while Mr. Harrow, the butler, stood by the door, his expression inscrutable. Poirot, ever observant, noted the tension in the room, a powder keg awaiting a spark. He had planned to question Victor about his father's will, suspecting it held a key to the motive, but a sudden commotion interrupted his thoughts. A crash echoed from the study, followed by a shout from Dr. Langley. "The tablet! It's gone!" he cried, bursting into the room, his face flushed with alarm. The group rushed to the study where the desk stood empty, the replica tablet valued for its historical significance and rumored to be linked to the Ashford fortune conspicuously absent. The window was shut, the room undisturbed save for a single rain-streaked journal left open on the desk. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "A theft in the midst of murder," he murmured. most audacious. He examined the journal, its pages damp from exposure to the storm's breath, perhaps through an unlatched window earlier in the day. A single entry dated a week prior caught his attention, written in Lord Ashford's precise hand. The crescent guards the heart, but the storm will reveal all. The words echoed the cipher fragments, and Poirot's pulse quickened. The heart of the storm, he whispered. It is not merely a place, but a truth. Turning to the group, he raised his voice above the storm's roar. Qui see the second crime. The tablet's theft is no coincidence. It is tied to the murder, but the timing, it is critical. When did each of you last see the tablet? He paused, noting their reactions. Lady Beatrice's clenched jaw, Victor's scowl, Eleanor's nervous glance at the journal. Langley spoke first, his voice unsteady. I was here an hour ago studying it. It was on the desk when I left. He gestured to his notebook, its pages filled with crescent sketches as proof of his presence. Victor snorted. You're always poking at that thing, Langley. Convenient it vanishes now. His tone was accusatory, but Poirot noted his own unease, as if he feared implication. Eleanor's voice was soft. I was in my room reading. I heard nothing until the crash. Her eyes avoided the journal, and Poirot wondered if she recognized its significance. Miss Wren hesitated, then said, I was with Emily, settling her for bed. We heard the storm, but no crash. Her voice was steady, but Poirot recalled the scrap of fabric from the passage, matching her dress. Lady Beatrice snapped. This is absurd. The tablet's a trinket, nothing more. You're wasting time, Poirot. But her eyes lingered on the journal, betraying curiosity. One Mr. Harrow, when questioned, claimed to have been in the kitchen preparing tea. I heard the crash and came at once, he said, his tone neutral, but his hands clasped tightly. Poirot paced, his mind seizing on the storm's rhythm. The crash, it coincided with a thunderclap.
Oui.
I noted the time, precisely midnight, when the clock struck. He gestured to the grandfather clock in the hall, its chimes still echoing in his memory. The thunder, it masks sound, but it also marks time. Where were you all when the clock struck midnight? The question hung in the air, and Poirot watched closely. Victor claimed he was in the library, Eleanor in her room, Lady Beatrice in the parlour, Langley in the study, Miss Wren with Emily, and Harrow in the kitchen. But Poirot's keen ear had caught a discrepancy. The crash had followed the thunderclap by mere seconds, suggesting the thief acted swiftly, perhaps using the noise as cover. He examined the study further, noting a faint muddy smudge on the carpet near the desk, similar to the footprint in the courtyard. The hidden passage, he realized, was the key. The thief, he said. They used the passage to move unseen, just as the killer did. But the rain, it betrays them. He pointed to the smudge, watching Miss Wren's face pale and Victor's hands clench. To test his theory, Poirot suggested a search of the passage, assigning each guest a role to observe their reactions. As they moved to the cellar, he lingered by the journal, slipping it into his pocket. The entry's reference to the crescent and heart suggested a physical or symbolic hiding place, possibly tied to the tablet's theft. In the passage, the air was damp and cold, the walls slick with seepage. Poirot's lantern revealed fresh scuff marks, confirming recent use. At the courtyard end, near the ivy-covered alcove, he found a single, rain-soaked thread, grey like the earlier scrap. The same hand, perhaps, he murmured, his eyes flicking to Miss Wren, who avoided his gaze. Back in the drawing-room, Poirot confronted the group. The tablet's theft is no mere crime of opportunity. It is linked to Lord Ashford's murder, to the cipher, to the crescent. Someone here knows its significance. He paused, his gaze sweeping over them, and someone here fears the truth it reveals. Inanerset's hands trembled, and Victor stepped protectively in front of her. Leave her be, Poirot, he snapped. Set's done nothing. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Perhaps, monsieur, but the storm it speaks, and Hercule Poirot listens. He resolved to examine the journal further, suspecting it held the key to the heart of the storm. The theft, the murder, the passage, all pointed to a family secret, one the killer was desperate to protect. As the clock struck 1, the storm's roar seemed to echo the beating of a guilty heart. Poirot stood by the window, the rain's rhythm a counterpoint to his thoughts. The journal entry, the muddy smudge, the stolen tablet, each was a thread in a tapestry of deception, and he was determined to weave them together before the night was through. Chapter 8. Reflections in the Rain. The storm over Blackthorn Manor raged on, its rain lashing the windows like 1,000 tiny accusations. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room, his small, precise figure commanding attention despite the oppressive atmosphere. The murder of Lord Reginald Ashford and the theft of the ancient tablet had woven a web of suspicion around the guests, each thread tightening with every passing hour. The journal entry, "The crescent guards the heart, but the storm will reveal all," echoed in Poirot's mind, a clue that linked the tablet, the cipher fragments, and the crescent symbols to a deeper secret. The rain, he thought, was not merely a force of nature but a mirror reflecting the truth, if one knew how to look. Poirot had called the guests together, ostensibly to discuss the tablet's significance, but his true aim was to observe their reactions, to catch the flicker of guilt in an unguarded moment. Lady Beatrice sat by the fire, her face a mask of disdain, though her fingers betrayed her tension, twisting a lace handkerchief. Victor Ashford stood near the window, his restlessness evident in his pacing, while Eleanor Vance sat beside him, her crescent pendant glinting faintly, her eyes fixed on the floor. Miss Clara Wren, now revealed as Clara Ward, maintained her quiet composure, though Poirot noted her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Dr. Simon Langley, the archaeologist, clutched his notebook, his enthusiasm for ancient lore undimmed by the crimes. Mr. Harrow, the butler, stood by the door, his gaunt face as unriddable as ever. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice calm but resonant, "the theft of the tablet is no mere act of greed. It is a piece of the puzzle, linked to the murder of Lord Ashford, and the cipher that speaks of deluge and storm. This tablet, it holds significance. Oui? Monsieur Langley, perhaps you can enlighten us." Langley blinked, startled from his notes. "The tablet? Oh, it's a replica of a Mesopotamian artifact, 3rd millennium BC, inscribed with a ritual to appease the rain gods. The crescent symbol represents hidden knowledge, a secret guarded by the deluge. Lord Ashford valued it, not for its monetary worth, but for its connection to the family's history." His eyes gleamed with academic fervor, but Poirot noted a slight tremor in his hands, as if he knew more than he revealed. "History?" Poirot pressed, his eyes sweeping the room. "And what history might that be? The Ashfords, they have secrets. Non-secrets that someone wished to keep buried." He paused, watching Lady Beatrice's lips purse and Victor's jaw tighten. Eleanor's fingers clutched her pendant, and Miss Wren's gaze flickered to the window, where rain streaked the glass like tears. Lady Beatrice spoke, her voice sharp. "This is nonsense, Poirot. The tablet's a trinket, nothing more. You're chasing ghosts." But her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease, and Poirot marked it. He moved to the mantel, where a collection of photographs stood in silver frames. One caught his eye, a faded image of a young woman, her features strikingly similar to Eleanor's, standing beside a man who resembled Lord Ashford in his youth. The photograph was rain-damaged, its edges curled as if exposed to moisture, and a faint crescent mark was scrawled in the corner, barely visible. Poirot's pulse quickened. "This woman," he said, holding up the photograph. "She is Lillian Ashford, oui? The resemblance to Mademoiselle Vance is remarkable." Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "That's my aunt," she whispered. "I never knew her, but my mother spoke of her. She died years ago, before I was born." Her voice trembled, and Victor stepped closer, his expression protective but strained. Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And this mark, the crescent, it appears again. It is no coincidence, I think." He turned to the group, his tone deceptively mild. "The tablet, the cipher, the crescent, all point to a secret tied to the Ashford lineage. Perhaps a legacy or a scandal that someone fears will surface." Victor snapped. "Enough, Poirot. You're accusing us all, stirring up old wounds for no reason. but his eyes darted to Eleanor, and Poirot noted the fear beneath his anger. Miss Wren spoke softly, her voice steady, despite her earlier revelation. Monsieur Poirot, the Ashfords have their secrets, but they're old, forgotten. Why would anyone kill for them now? Her question was pointed, but Poirot sensed she was deflecting, protecting her own connection to Edward Ashford. Dr. Langley interjected, oblivious to the tension. The crescent ritual. It's about revelation, you see. The rain washes away deceit, exposing the truth. Perhaps the killer believes they're fulfilling some ancient mandate. His words were academic, but Poirot noted their eerie resonance with the cipher's phrases. To test the group further, Poirot suggested examining the study again, hoping to provoke a reaction. As they moved, he lingered by the window, where the rain's reflection seemed to dance with shadows. He recalled the muddy smudge in the study, the grey thread in the passage, and the journal entry. The pieces were aligning, and a pattern was emerging, a pattern centered on the Ashford family's past. In the study, Poirot examined the desk, noting a faint scratch near where the tablet had rested, as if it had been pried loose. The rain-damaged photograph, now in his pocket, suggested a connection between Eleanor and Lillian Ashford, perhaps a motive rooted in inheritance or betrayal. He turned to Eleanor, his voice gentle. "Mademoiselle, your aunt, did she leave anything behind? A letter, perhaps, or a keepsake?" Eleanor hesitated, her eyes wide. "Just stories," she said. "My mother said Lillian was troubled, that she left the family under a cloud." Her voice faltered, and Poirot sensed she was holding back. As the group returned to the drawing-room, Poirot's mind crystallized around a suspect, Miss Wren, whose past as Clara Ward tied her to Edward Ashford, and whose knowledge of the passage suggested opportunity. Yet the footprint, small, unfamiliar, nagged at him, pointing to another player. The crescent marks appearing on the photograph, the tablet and the windows were a deliberate signature, but whose? Alone by the fire, Poirot reviewed the clues, the cipher fragments, the journal, the passage, the theft. The rain, he realized, was the killer's ally, washing away evidence but leaving echoes of intent. "The reflections in the rain," he murmured. "They show me the face of guilt." He resolved to press Eleanor further about her aunt, and to search the manor for more traces of the crescent, certain that the killer was growing bolder and more desperate. Chapter 9. The Hidden Current. The rain at Blackthorn Manor fell with a relentless insistence, its steady rhythm weaving a tapestry of isolation around the estate. Hercule Poirot stood at the entrance to the hidden passage in the cellar, his lantern casting flickering shadows on the damp stone walls. The discovery of the passage, coupled with the rain-damaged photograph and the cipher fragments, beneath the deluge, the truth lies, seek the heart of the storm, had sharpened his focus. The murder of Lord Reginald Ashford and the theft of the ancient tablet were threads in a complex web, and Poirot sensed the heart of the storm was close, hidden within the manor's secrets. The cellar air was heavy with the scent of earth and mildew, the storm's seepage creating rivulets that trickled down the walls. Poirot, dressed impeccably despite the damp, traced the passage's rough-hewn contours, his mind replaying the clues, the muddy footprint, the crescent marks, the journal entry, and Miss Clara Wren's revelation as Clara Ward. The passage, he suspected, was the killer's pathway, allowing them to move unseen, but the rainwater within it suggested recent activity, perhaps tied to the tablet's theft. He followed the tunnel, his lantern illuminating fresh scuff marks and droplets of water that glistened like clues in the dark. The passage sloped gently upward, ending in the ivy-covered alcove near the courtyard fountain, where Lord Ashford's body had been found. Poirot examined the exit, noting a faint smear of mud on the stone, matching the smudge in the study. A single grey thread, like the one found earlier, caught on a jagged edge, confirmed the passage's use. "The hidden current," he murmured. "It flows through the manor, carrying the truth." Returning to the drawing-room, Poirot sought Victor Ashford, whose restlessness and defensive outbursts had marked him as a figure of interest. Victor was alone, staring out the window at the rain-soaked grounds, his hands clenched. "Monsieur Victor," Poirot said, his voice calm but probing, "you know this manor well. Oui? Its secrets, its passages, perhaps you have walked them?" Victor turned, his eyes narrowing. "What are you getting at, Poirot? I've got nothing to hide." But his voice carried a tremor, and Poirot noted the way his gaze flicked to the door, as if expecting an interruption. "The passage in the cellar," Poirot continued, his tone disarming. "It is no secret to you, I think. You grew up here, playing in its shadows. Did you know it leads to the courtyard where your father met his end?" Victor's face paled, and he took a step back. "That old tunnel, it's been sealed for years. I haven't been down there since I was a boy." His words were quick, too quick, and Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Sealed, monsieur? Yet it is open now and used recently. The rain, it leaves traces, mud, threads, water. Someone moved through it, perhaps to kill, perhaps to steal." Poirot paused, watching Victor Sept's hands clench tighter. "You knew of it, non?" Victor's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "All right. I knew it was there. Father told me about it when I was young. Said it was used during the war for smuggling or hiding. But I haven't gone near it in years. You think I'd use it to kill my own father?" His voice rose, a mix of anger and fear. Poirot's sipped smile was enigmatic. "I think, monsieur, that knowledge is power, and power can be dangerous. Tell me, what do you know of your uncle, Edward Ashford? His disappearance, it is tied to this manor sipped's secrets, oui?" Victor hesitated, his eyes darting away. Edward was a dreamer, always chasing myths about a family fortune. He vanished when I was a boy. Father said he ran off, shamed by some scandal. That's all I know. But his tone lacked conviction, and Poirot sensed a half-truth. Leaving Victor, Poirot returned to the study, where the rain-damaged photograph of Lillian Ashford and the journal entry, "The crescent guards the heart, but the storm will reveal all," lingered in his mind. The resemblance between Lillian and Eleanor Vance suggested a familial tie, perhaps a motive rooted in inheritance or betrayal. He examined the locked cabinet, its brass fittings gleaming in the dim light. A faint scratch near the lock hinted at tampering, possibly during the tablet's theft. Poirot's thoughts turned to the manor's architecture, its Gothic design a labyrinth of hidden spaces. The passage's rainwater suggested a connection to the storm, perhaps an entrance exposed by flooding. He ventured to the library, where the damp book on Ashford history had first caught his attention. Flipping through its pages, he found a passage about a family tragedy. Lillian Ashford's death, rumored to be a suicide after a falling out with her brother Edward. The book mentioned a heart of the manor, a cryptic reference to a hidden chamber. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered, his pulse quickening. The cipher's heart of the storm could be a literal place, a chamber tied to the family's secrets. He resolved to search for it, but first he needed to test the guests' reactions. Gathering them in the drawing-room, Poirot spoke with deliberate calm. "Mes amis, the passage reveals much, but there is more to uncover. A chamber, perhaps, where the Ashford secrets are kept. Who among you knows of such a place?" His eyes swept over the group. Lady Beatrice's icy stare, Eleanor's nervous fidgeting, Miss Wren's guarded silence, Dr. Langley's distracted muttering, and Mr. Harrow's stoic presence. Lady Beatrice scoffed. "You're chasing fairy tales, Poirot. There's no such chamber." But her voice held a tremor, and Poirot noted it. Eleanor's eyes widened. "A chamber? I don't know anything about that." Her fingers clutched her pendant, the crescent glinting ominously. Miss Wren spoke softly. "The manor is old, Monsieur Poirot. There are stories, but nothing more." Her tone was steady, but Poirot recalled her connection to Edward, suspecting she knew more. Dr. Langley interjected. "Old houses like this often have hidden rooms, priest-holes, secret vaults. Fascinating, really." His enthusiasm seemed genuine, but Poirot wondered if it masked deeper knowledge. As the group dispersed, Poirot lingered, his mind racing. The passage, the photograph, the journal, all pointed to a tragedy involving Lillian and Edward, perhaps tied to the rumored fortune. Victor's knowledge of the passage made him a suspect, but the small footprint suggested another player. The crescent marks appearing on windows, photographs, and the tablet were a signature, but whose? Outside, the rain fell in heavy curtains. its rhythm a counterpoint to Poirot's thoughts. "The hidden current," he murmured. "It flows beneath the surface, carrying the truth to light." He resolved to search for the chamber, and to press Victor further, certain that the manor's secrets were about to surface, like debris in a flood. Chapter 10. The Truth Beneath the Surface. The rain at Blackthorn Manor had softened to a gentle drizzle, as if the storm, exhausted by its own fury, was beginning to relent. Hercule Poirot stood in the library, his sharp eyes fixed on the cipher fragments, beneath the deluge. The truth lies. Seek the heart of the storm, laid out on a table like pieces of a shattered mosaic. The murder of Lord Reginald Ashford, the theft of the ancient tablet, and the hidden passage had woven a complex tapestry of deception, but Poirot's little grey cells were aligning the threads. The journal entry, the crescent marks, and the rain-damaged photograph pointed to a family secret, and Poirot suspected the heart of the storm was not merely metaphorical, but a physical hiding place. The morning light, filtered through the thinning clouds, cast a pale glow over the manor, its Gothic architecture a silent witness to the unfolding drama. Poirot had spent the night pondering the cipher, its words suggesting a layered meaning. The phrase "beneath the deluge" hinted at something hidden below, perhaps in the passage or a deeper chamber. The journal's mention of the crescent guarding the heart suggested a specific location, and Victor's knowledge of the passage made him a focal point. Yet the small, unfamiliar footprint nagged at Poirot, suggesting another player in this deadly game. He began the day by re-examining the study where the tablet had been stolen. The locked cabinet with its faint scratch marks drew his attention. Using a small tool from his pocket, Poirot probed the lock, his fingers deft and precise. With a soft click, the cabinet opened, revealing a bundle of papers and a small, ornate key etched with a crescent symbol. Among the papers was a third cipher fragment, its ink fresh despite the damp where the crescent rests. "The heart is safe." Poirot's pulse quickened. The fragments, now 3, formed a clearer message, a safe guarded by the crescent, hidden in the manor's heart. "The heart," he murmured. "It is a safe, and the storm. It points the way." He pocketed the key and fragment, his mind racing. The safe's location was likely tied to the manor's architecture, perhaps in the fabled chamber hinted at in the library's book. But to find it, he needed to provoke a reaction from the killer, who was growing restless under his scrutiny. Poirot gathered the guests in the drawing-room, his demeanor calm but calculated. Lady Beatrice sat stiffly, her eyes cold. Victor paced, his agitation evident. Eleanor Vance clutched her crescent pendant, her face pale. Miss Clara Wren, exposed as Clara Ward, maintained a guarded silence. Simon Langley scribbled in his notebook, muttering about rituals, and Mr. Harrow stood by the door, his expression unreadable. The air was thick with tension, the drizzle outside a soft counterpoint to the storm within. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice resonant. "The truth, it lies beneath the surface, hidden like a safe in the heart of this manor. The cipher, it speaks of a crescent and a heart, a place where secrets are kept. I believe Lord Ashford was killed to protect this secret, and the tablet stolen to divert us. But Hercule Poirot, he is not so easily misled." He paused, holding up the third fragment, watching their reactions. Eleanor gasped, her hand tightening on her pendant. Victor's eyes narrowed, and Miss Wren's face paled. Lady Beatrice's lips pursed, but she said nothing. Langley looked up, intrigued, while Harrow's hands twitched slightly. Poirot continued. "This key," he said, producing the crescent-etched key, "it unlocks the truth. Who among you knows of a safe in this house?" A heavy silence followed. Victor broke it, his voice sharp. "A safe? You're grasping at straws, Poirot. There's no safe here." But his eyes flickered to the study door, a telltale sign, Poirot noted.
Kay.
Eleanor's voice trembled. I don't know anything about a safe. My aunt never mentioned such a thing." Her mention of Lillian Ashford, unprompted, caught Poirot's attention, suggesting she knew more than she admitted. Miss Wren spoke softly. "The manor is old, Monsieur Poirot. There could be a safe, but I've never seen it." Her tone was steady, but Poirot recalled her connection to Edward Ashford, wondering if she was deflecting. To test his theory, Poirot staged a revelation. "I propose we search the study again," he said, "but with care, for the killer watches us. The safe, I believe, is hidden behind a panel, marked by the crescent." He watched closely as he spoke, noting Victor's sudden stillness and Eleanor's quick glance at Miss Wren. In the study, Poirot moved to the fireplace, where a carved crescent adorned the mantel, a detail he had noticed earlier. He pressed it, and a soft click revealed a hidden panel, exposing a small safe embedded in the wall. The guests gasped, but Poirot's eyes were on Miss Wren, whose hand flew to her mouth, betraying knowledge. The key fit perfectly, but the safe was empty, its contents likely removed with the tablet. "The killer," Poirot said, turning to the group. "They have been one step ahead, but they have made a mistake, leaving this key behind." His gaze locked on Miss Wren, who looked away, her composure fraying. Victor stepped forward, his face flushed. "You're accusing her?" he snapped. "Clara's no killer." His defense was vehement, but Poirot noted a hint of desperation, as if he feared her exposure. Eleanor's voice was barely audible. What was in the safe? Her question, innocent yet pointed, suggested she suspected its contents. Poirot smiled faintly. "That, mademoiselle, is the question. A fortune, perhaps, or a truth too dangerous to reveal." He dismissed the group, but as they left, he caught Miss Wren lingering by the door, her eyes darting to the safe. "Mademoiselle," he said softly, "you know more than you say. The truth, it will surface, like water in a flood." Alone, Poirot reflected on the clues: the empty safe, the crescent key, the photograph linking Eleanor to Lillian. The subsiding rain symbolized clarity, but the motive remained murky. Miss Wren's reaction confirmed her involvement, but the small footprint suggested another hand. The cipher's heart was the safe, but its contents, likely tied to Edward Ashford's disappearance, were the key to the murder. As the drizzle faded to a mist, Poirot stood by the window, the manor's secrets swirling in his mind. "The truth beneath the surface," he murmured. "It rises, and Hercule Poirot will meet it." He resolved to confront Miss Wren privately and search for the tablet's hiding place, certain the killer's next mistake was imminent. Chapter 11. The Final Gambit. The storm over Blackthorn Manor had dwindled to a faint drizzle, its once furious deluge, now a whisper of mist that clung to the estate, like a lingering ghost. Hercule Poirot stood in the study, his sharp eyes fixed on the empty safe behind the crescent-marked panel, the ornate key still in his pocket. The murder of Lord Reginald Ashford, the theft of the ancient tablet, and the cipher fragments beneath the deluge. The truth lies. Seek the heart of the storm, where the crescent rests. The heart is safe, had led him to this moment. The clues, the muddy footprint, the rain-damaged photograph, the hidden passage, the journal entry, were threads in a tapestry now nearly complete. Poirot's little grey cells hummed with certainty. The killer was within reach, and a final gambit would unmask them. The manor's Gothic halls, washed clean by the storm's aftermath, seemed to hold their breath. Poirot had spent the morning reviewing his observations. Miss Clara Wren's past as Clara Ward, tied to Edward Ashford's scandal, Victor Ashford's knowledge of the hidden passage, Eleanor Vance's connection to Lillian Ashford through the photograph, the crescent symbols linking the tablet, the cipher and Eleanor's pendant, and the small, unfamiliar footprint suggesting an unseen player. The safe, now empty, had likely held a document or artifact tied to the Ashford fortune, and the killer had killed to keep it hidden. But Poirot sensed desperation in their actions, the stolen tablet, the scattered cipher fragments, and he resolved to exploit it. He devised a trap, simple yet elegant, to provoke the killer into a mistake. He announced to the guests, gathered in the drawing-room, that he had found a new clue in the passage, a document implicating the murderer. "It is a confession," he lied, his voice calm but resonant, written in the killer's hand, hidden where the rain could not reach. "Tonight I will retrieve it, alone, at midnight." His eyes swept over the group. Lady Beatrice's icy glare, Victor's clenched fists, Eleanor's trembling hands, Miss Wren's guarded silence. Dr. Simon Langley's distracted muttering, and Mr. Harrow's stoic presence. Victor scoffed, his voice sharp. "A confession? You're bluffing, Poirot. There's nothing in that passage but mud and ghosts." But his eyes betrayed unease, flicking to Eleanor, who clutched her crescent pendant tightly. Miss Wren spoke softly. "Be careful, Monsieur Poirot. The manor's secrets are dangerous." Her warning was sincere, but Poirot noted a flicker of fear, as if she dreaded the trap's success. Eleanor's voice was barely audible. "What does it say, this confession?" Her question, laced with panic, confirmed Poirot's suspicion that she knew more than she admitted. Lady Beatrice snapped. "This is absurd. You're toying with us, Poirot." But her hands twisted her handkerchief, betraying her composure's fragility. Poirot smiled faintly. "The truth, madame. It is never a game. It is a tide, rising to sweep away deception." He dismissed the group, instructing them to remain in their rooms after dinner. Alone, he prepared his trap, placing a sealed envelope, empty but marked with a crescent, in the passage's alcove, visible to anyone who ventured there. As midnight approached, Poirot hid in the cellar, his lantern dimmed, his senses alert. The manor was silent save for the drip of residual rainwater and the distant creak of settling wood. He recalled earlier clues, the journal entry, "The crescent guards the heart, but the storm will reveal all," pointing to the safe, the photograph linking Eleanor to Lillian Ashford, who died in disgrace, Miss Wren's connection to Edward, whose disappearance was tied to a rumored fortune. The cipher, he realized, was a coded confession, its fragments deliberately scattered to taunt or distract. The killer had used the passage to kill Lord Ashford, leaving no footprints, and stolen the tablet to hide its connection to the safe's contents. A soft shuffle broke his reverie. Someone was in the passage. Poirot held his breath, watching as a figure emerged into the alcove, their silhouettes small and lithe. They reached for the envelope, hesitating, then seized it. Poirot stepped forward, his lantern flaring. "Mademoiselle Eleanor," he said, his voice cutting through the darkness. Eleanor Vance froze, the envelope in her hand, her face a mask of fear. "Monsieur Poirot, I wasn't." Her words faltered, and the crescent pendant at her throat glinted in the light. "You were curious, non?" Poirot said, his tone gentle but relentless. "Or perhaps you feared what this to confession thirst might reveal. Tell me, mademoiselle, what do you know of Lillian Ashford's secret?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "She was my aunt," she whispered. "My mother told me she loved Edward, but they were betrayed. There was a document, a will, hidden in the safe, naming Edward's heir. Lord Ashford wanted to reveal it, to right the wrong, but someone stopped him." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And you, mademoiselle, did you stop him?" He stepped closer, watching her tremble. "No," she cried. "I loved him, but I found the cipher fragments in my aunt's old room. I thought they were hers, a warning from the past." Her voice broke, and Poirot saw truth in her fear, but also a mission. Before he could press further, a noise echoed from the passage, a muffled thud. Poirot turned, lantern raised, and saw Miss Wren emerging, her face pale but resolute. "Mademoiselle Wren," he said, "you too seek the truth." She hesitated, then nodded. "I heard you were coming here. I wanted to help. I knew Edward used the passage long ago. I thought the confession might be his." Her eyes darted to Eleanor, and Poirot sensed a shared secret. He seized the moment. "The confession," he said. "It is not in this envelope, but in the cipher itself. It speaks of a will hidden by the crescent, stolen with the tablet. The killer, they killed to keep it secret. But the rain, it betrays them." He watched their reactions. Eleanor's tears, Miss Wren's clenched hands. Flashbacks flooded Poirot's mind. The crescent on the window, the muddy smudge in the study, the small footprint. He realized the killer had used Eleanor's pendant as inspiration, planting crescent marks to mislead. Miss Wren, with her knowledge of Edward and the passage, was complicit, but the footprint pointed to another, someone small, agile, like Eleanor. "You, mademoiselle," he said to Eleanor. "You found the fragments, but did you write them?" Her silence was answer enough. Poirot turned to Miss Wren. "And you helped hide the truth for Edward Sett's sake." "Non." The drizzle outside faded, and the manor seemed to hold its breath. Poirot knew the killer was cornered. Their desperation, a beacon. "The final gambit," he murmured. "It is played, and Hercule Poirot wins." He resolved to gather the guests at dawn, to reveal the coded confession's truth and unmask the murderer in the storm's fading light. Chapter 12. The Reckoning. The rain over Blackthorn Manor had ceased, leaving a heavy silence that seemed to echo the weight of the truth about to be unveiled. Hercule Poirot stood in the drawing-room, his small, precise figure commanding the space as the morning light filtered through the now clear windows, casting long shadows across the gathered guests. The murder of Lord Reginald Ashford, the theft of the ancient tablet, and the cryptic cipher fragments beneath the deluge. The truth lies. Seek the heart of the storm, where the crescent rests. The heart is safe. Had led to this moment. The clues, the hidden passage, the muddy footprint, the rain-damaged photograph, the journal entry, and the crescent marks had formed a tapestry of deception, and Poirot's little grey cells had woven it into a solution. The guests sat in tense anticipation. Lady Beatrice, her face a mask of icy control. Victor Ashford, his eyes restless with dread. Eleanor Vance clutching her crescent pendant, her face pale. Miss Clara Wren exposed as Clara Ward, her composure fraying. Dr. Simon Langley clutching his notebook, his academic detachment strained, and Mr. Harrow, the butler, standing by the door, his gaunt face unreadable. The air was thick with expectation, the manor's Gothic walls seeming to lean in, awaiting the revelation. "Mes amis," Poirot began, his voice calm but resonant. "A crime has been committed in this house, a murder followed by a theft, both designed to conceal a secret written in rain. Hercule Poirot has unraveled this secret, and now the reckoning comes." He paused, his eyes sweeping the room, noting each flicker of emotion. "Let us begin with the clues, for they tell the story." He held up the cipher fragments. "These words, scattered like raindrops, form a coded confession, a will, hidden in a safe, tied to the Ashford fortune. Lord Ashford wished to reveal it, to right a past wrong, but someone could not allow this." He gestured to the photograph of Lillian Ashford, its crescent mark a silent accusation. Lillian's sister to Edward Ashford loved him, but their bond led to a scandal. Edward vanished, and Lillian died in disgrace, leaving a will naming an heir, a secret Lord Ashford sought to restore. Poirot turned to the hidden passage. The killer used this tunnel to reach the courtyard, leaving no footprints in the mud, for the rain was their ally. The knife taken from the kitchen was placed to mislead, suggesting haste, but it was deliberate. The tablet's theft was a diversion, hiding the will's significance. He produced the journal entry. "The crescent guards the heart, but the storm will reveal all." This pointed to the safe, marked by a crescent, where the will was kept. He paced, his voice rising. The crescent marks on windows, the photograph. Eleanor's pendant were a signature meant to confuse, but they betrayed the killer's mind, obsessed with the past. The small footprint, too narrow for any guest's shoes, suggested another player, but it was a deception, a child's shoe, used to mislead. Poirot's gaze settled on Eleanor. "Mademoiselle Vance, you are Lillian's niece. Oui? You found the cipher fragments in her old room, believing them hers, but you did not write them." Eleanor nodded, tears in her eyes, and Poirot continued. "You feared the truth, for it tied you to a fortune you did not seek." He turned to Miss Wren. "Mademoiselle Ward, you loved Edward Ashford, and you returned to protect his legacy. You knew of the passage, but you did not kill." Miss Wren's shoulders sagged, relief mingling with fear. Poirot's eyes fixed on Victor Ashford, whose face had grown ashen. "Monsieur Victor, you knew the passage, the safe, the will. Your father's plan to restore Edward's heir threatened your inheritance. You could not allow it." Victor's hands clenched, but he remained silent. Poirot stepped closer, his voice relentless. You wrote the cipher fragments imitating Edward's hand to taunt your father and mislead us. You used the passage to kill him, stabbing him in the courtyard as the rain hid your tracks. You stole the tablet to hide the will, planting a child's shoe to suggest an outsider. But the crescent marks, inspired by Eleanor's pendant, were your mistake. They revealed your obsession with the past, with Lillian and Edward's betrayal. Victor leapt to his feet, his voice hoarse. You have no proof, Poirot. This is madness. But his eyes darted to the door, betraying his panic. Poirot produced the grey thread from the passage. This from your coat caught in the alcove, the safe's key left behind in your haste. The journal read by you before the murder, its words echoing in your ciphers. You killed to protect your fortune. But the rain, it betrayed you. He paused, his voice softening. Confess, monsieur, for the truth is clear. Victor's defiance crumbled, his face contorting with guilt. He was going to give it all away, he cried. To some bastard heir of Edward's. I couldn't let him ruin us. His confession spilled out, a torrent of anger and fear, admitting to the murder, the theft, and the forged ciphers to frame an unknown enemy. Eleanor sobbed, Lady Beatrice gasped, and Miss Wren closed her eyes, as if mourning the past anew. Poirot's expression was sombre. The heart of the storm, it was your greed, monsieur. The rain hid your tracks, but not from Hercule Poirot. He turned to Mr. Harrow. Summon the authorities when the road's clear. Justice will be served. As Victor was led away, the guests dispersed, their faces heavy with shock. Eleanor approached Poirot, her voice trembling. I didn't know, Monsieur Poirot. I thought the fragments were Lillian's, a warning from the past. Poirot nodded, his eyes kind. You are innocent, mademoiselle, but you must let the past rest. Miss Wren lingered, her voice soft. Edward Septse, does it exist? Poirot Sept's smile was enigmatic. Perhaps, mademoiselle, but that is a secret for another day. The drawing-room emptied, leaving Poirot alone with the fading echoes of the storm. The clues, the passage, the footprint, the ciphers, the crescent, had led to Victor, whose desperation to protect his inheritance had driven him to murder. The rain, once a veil, had become a mirror, reflecting the truth through Poirot's relentless logic. He stepped to the window where the sky was clearing, the manor's Gothic silhouette softened by the morning light. The reckoning, he murmured. It comes with the calm, and Hercule Poirot has seen it through. The secret written in rain was no more, its truth laid bare like the earth after a flood. Chapter 13. The Rain Sceptre's Last Whisper. The storm that had besieged Blackthorn Manor had finally passed, leaving the English countryside glistening under a tentative sun. The air was fresh, carrying the scent of wet earth and renewal, as if the rain had washed away not only the mud, but the weight of the secrets that had festered within the manor's Gothic walls. Hercule Poirot stood in the entrance hall, his suitcase packed, his moustache impeccably groomed, ready to depart now that the roads were passable. The murder of Lord Reginald Ashford, the theft of the ancient tablet, and the cipher fragments beneath the deluge. The truth lies. Seek the heart of the storm. Where the crescent rests, the heart is safe, had been resolved, with Victor Ashford's confession exposing his greed-driven crime. Yet, as Poirot prepared to leave, his little grey cells lingered on the case, sifting through its echoes. Captain Arthur Hastings, Poirot's old friend and confidant, had arrived that morning, summoned by a telegram sent as soon as the telephone lines were restored. His familiar figure, clad in a tweed coat and brimming with earnest curiosity, brought a warmth to the sombre manor. Poirot, old chap, Hastings said, settling into a chair in the drawing-room. You've done it again. Unravelled a proper tangle, eh? But do tell me how you pieced it all together. His eyes sparkled with anticipation, and Poirot, ever fond of an audience, obliged. Mon ami, Poirot began, his voice rich with satisfaction. The case, it was like the rain itself, chaotic, yet revealing. The clues, they were scattered like droplets, but to Hercule Poirot they formed a pattern. He paced, his hands clasped behind his back, as he recounted the investigation. The cryptic letter warning of secrets written in rain, the body in the courtyard with no footprints, The hidden passage, the muddy footprint, the rain-damaged photograph of Lillian Ashford, the journal entry, and the crescent marks that appeared on windows, the tablet, and Eleanor's pendant. The cipher fragments, he continued. They were a confession written by Victor to taunt his father and mislead us. He knew of the will in the safe, naming Edward Ashford's heir, which threatened his inheritance. He used the passage to kill Lord Ashford, leaving no tracks in the rain-soaked courtyard, and stole the tablet to hide its connection to the will. The crescent marks, inspired by Eleanor's pendant, were his signature, a flourish of arrogance. Hastings nodded, his brow furrowed. "But that footprint, Poirot, the small one, you said it was a child Sip's shoe. A trick." "Precisement," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. Victor, he was clever, using a shoe from Emily's wardrobe to suggest an outsider, but the grey thread from his coat caught in the passage betrayed him. The safe's key, left in haste, and the journal's words read by him before the murder, confirmed his guilt. His confession, it was the final drop in the deluge. Hastings leaned forward, and Eleanor, Miss Wren, they seemed tangled up in it too. Poirot's expression softened. Mademoiselle Eleanor, she was innocent but haunted by her Aunt Lillian's past. She found the cipher fragments in Lillian's old room, believing them a warning from history. Miss Wren, or Clara Ward, loved Edward Ashford and returned to protect his legacy. She knew of the passage but did not kill. Their secrets were of the heart, not of murder. The drawing room, now bathed in sunlight, felt lighter, as if the manor itself exhaled after the storm. Poirot's gaze drifted to the window, where the last traces of mist clung to the glass. The rain, Hastings, it was both ally and adversary. It hid Victor's tracks, but revealed his mistakes. The thread, the key, the marks. It spoke, and Hercule Poirot listened. Hastings chuckled. "You make it sound almost poetic, Poirot. But what of the will? Was there really an heir?" Poirot Sip's smile was enigmatic. "Perhaps, mon ami. The safe was empty, its contents likely destroyed by Victor. But the truth of Edward Sip's heir, it is a secret the Ashfords may yet uncover. For now, justice is served, and that is enough." They stepped outside where the manor's grounds sparkled with residual raindrops, the fountain now still, its overflow subsided. Lady Beatrice had retreated to her rooms, her grief tempered by stoic resolve. Eleanor and Miss Wren had found solace in each other, their shared connection to the past, a quiet bond. Dr. Simon Langley, his academic zeal undimmed, had left to catalogue the manor's artifacts, while Mr. Harrow resumed his duties, his loyalty unshaken. As they walked to the waiting motor-car, Hastings glanced back at the manor, a grim place. Poirot. All those secrets, buried for years, only to come out in a storm. Poirot nodded, his eyes tracing the ivy-covered walls. The human heart, Hastings. It is like this manor, full of hidden passages and locked rooms. But the truth, it is like the rain. It falls, it seeps, it reveals. And Hercule Poirot, he is there to see it. The car rumbled to life, carrying them down the lane, now clear of floodwaters. The countryside stretched before them, green and vibrant, as if the storm had cleansed it of shadows. Poirot leaned back, his mind at ease, though already anticipating the next puzzle. "The rain's last whisper," he murmured. "It speaks of truth and of peace." He closed his eyes, the rhythm of the car a gentle echo of the storm's cadence. Blackthorn Manor faded into the distance, its secrets laid to rest, but its legacy lingered in Poirot's thoughts, a reminder that even in the darkest deluge, the light of reason could prevail.